So just a little bit of background on the homework assignment. This is sort of what I'm looking for. Your assignment should look similar to this. I have a fictitious character. I made up an address and made up some experience and whatnot, because again, I'm not too worried about the content. We're mostly worried about the structure, the data. Um, so this is an example page. You can see I've got an H1 and I've got an H2 and this is an H3. So I incorporated some of those different H level headings. I've got some lists in here, which of course most resumes have these lists. If you look at my source code, so I'll view the source. So you can see I've got my H1 here. I've got, a paragraph around the address. I gave it an ID. This is something that you could start doing if you like. You can give things an ID. It certainly isn't required at this stage, but you'll be using that stuff later on. So again, this is sort of what I'm looking for on this assignment. And you can see I've got some mistakes in here highlighted in red. So for example, here I opened the LI tag, then I closed it, and I've got an extra closing one here. I shouldn't have had this opening tag here. So little mistakes like that you want to look for. So how do you find these little mistakes? These tiny little errors that you might have in your page. Well, one way we can do that is with the W3C validation service. So you go to validator.w3.org and you can plug in an address. So you would put, for example, I would put http thinkinfo.net/bgreen/index.html, and it'll validate it and give me some errors and warnings. Now, if you wrote your code correctly, you won't see errors. You might see some warnings, but you shouldn't see any error messages. By the way, this address, we need to talk about this real quick. You always start with your protocol, which is typically HTTP, although HTTPS will work as well on our site that we're using. It doesn't always work. S, of course, for secure. This is the domain name. So that's our domain name in the URL. And then we have a path. So you always have a domain name. Sometimes you have a path. So in my case, it's bgreen. That's the path on the server. And then I've got my index.html, which is the actual resource that we want to load. So just make sure you're familiar with those 4 parts of a URL: the protocol, domain name, path, and the resource. And also be familiar with absolute and relative paths. So this is an absolute path, but if I just had /A1, that's a relative path, because it's relative to where I'm at right now. So again, here I've got some warnings. And if you scroll down, I'll tell you what the warnings and the errors are. So we have here no character encoding. So you have to do a character encoding in order to pass this. Unable to determine parse mode. That's because we don't have the doc type in this document. So I would have to have that doc type. And you can see here, since it had no idea what to do, it fell all the way back to HTML, which, if you read in your book, is one of the first markup languages that came out. So because it couldn't determine exactly what to do with this document, it just went all the way back to HTML and used that as the parsing engine. So again, you should be validating your page and make sure that you don't have too many errors or warnings. You might have a couple warnings, but try not to have any errors. If you have any questions on the homework assignment, let me know.